Hi, I'm Viviana, and welcome to Hyph School. Today's video is talking about auditioning and the 3 Ps to standing out in every audition. Some of these may sound really basic, but even as a professional and somebody who's been in the business for a long time, it can be really good to remind yourself of these things because oftentimes we forget, and it can be a really big detriment when we look back and something's not working about our audition and it turns out that we just didn't take care of something pretty basic. Or if you're brand new and you just don't really know where to start, or you get really nervous, I get really nervous, it can be good to have stuff to just guide you, little checklists of, I need to take care of these 3 things before I even try to start shooting that self-tape or before I go to that audition or that callback. So these are 3 Ps. These are pretty basic, but I think they're very important. Number 1, preparation. What I can tell you is it's mind-blowing how many times I have been on the casting or directing side and watching actor auditions, and 80% of them are underprepared. No joke. And that may sound wild to you. Like, how can somebody get an audition and not be prepared? But here's the thing. Preparation means more than one thing. Preparation is not just that you look at your lines, you make a couple choices, you read through it a couple times with your buddy, and you shoot it. Granted, that's better than some that I've seen. But you also need to make sure that you are actually using all the tools that you have at your disposal. Are you using every piece of knowledge that you understand about acting to bring this audition your best self? Most of the time, we're in a rush. It's late. We had an extra shift at work. There's stuff going on. Our mom is sick. Our little brother is calling, whatever is going on in our lives, and it distracts us from the work. So my suggestion is to set what I like to call office hours. Now, office hours are time that you set aside where you set a timer and you do nothing but work on your audition, whether that is 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. It doesn't really matter. The key thing is your phone is off. Nothing is important during that chunk of time except for your audition. You should be practicing out loud. You should be trying many different things. You should be experimenting. You should really use all the different tools that you have to make sure you have prepared. Have you done the work? Who is this character? What do they want? Where are they? What time is it? What is the relationship to the person they're talking to? What is their hope of an outcome? How does that get solved, satisfied, or unsatisfied in the scene? There's so many questions you need to be asking yourself. What is the moment before? Why is it important? Why does this scene matter to this person, right? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But it's all that acting work that you actually do know that you're just not bringing in with you because you're not focusing on preparation the way you know how. Preparation is key. Side note, if you're someone like me and you struggle with anxiety, which I struggle with anxiety a lot in my entire career, I have always had to battle really bad nerves for auditions. And I sometimes have to do it for self-tapes too. Even when I'm by myself, I'll struggle. If you're like me and you struggle with anxiety when you're auditioning, you need to really make sure you are as prepared as possible, because then if that anxiety decides to kick in and get you all flustered, you have your preparation to fall back on. And I cannot tell you how incredibly valuable that is. It's a game changer and a lifesaver, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you are somebody who's like, I don't know what fully prepared or not prepared is, here's a couple quick, easy guidelines. You should read it out loud, every scene separately, a minimum of 10 times in different ways every single time. One of the things you want to be careful is that you don't memorize stuff in a sing-song or by rote in a certain rhythm, because it can make it very hard for you to take direction. So you want to do something that's different every single time. It's also a great way to test out a bunch of different options. What are these tactics? What are these choices? Could I play with what's happening in this moment? You get 10 different tries. That's a minimum. Rehearsal number 1, when you set that timer, should be however long it takes to do 10 times out loud each scene. Then it's always nice to have a checklist of questions. Who am I? What do I care about? What do I want in the scene? Who am I talking to? What is my relationship to them? Where am I? What is my environment? How does it affect me? What was my moment before? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? Then you can check, how does this character dress? What kind of person are they? How do they feel in this moment? How do they react? How do they feel about what the other person is doing or saying to them? Have you done all that work? Have you answered those questions? This doesn't need to be a college essay, and it doesn't need to take a really long time. It just needs to happen. In that time that you set aside for yourself to work on your scenes, make sure you've answered all the important questions. The second P is personalization. This is a really easy one, especially if you get a kind of cool character and you're like, oh, this is a great guest star and I'm going to get to be this murderer. I'm going to get to be this interesting person that I don't get to play much. Sometimes we forget to bring ourselves. And especially for TV, I think that it's important to bring what you already have with you into the character. Not every single time. Every once in a while, you get to do something a little bit more transformative, but it's less common, especially in television. So that being said, if you feel like you're a little bit stuck in a rut and you've been taping and something's just not clicking, could you personalize it more? Could you try a different substitution? If you're talking to somebody that's supposed to be a divorce attorney in your scene, could you make that person your uncle or your dad or a professor at school or a teacher you had? Could you give them something, a trait, an image that makes it just a little bit more personal for you so that when they say something to you in the scene, you react with more of your own personal history? Sometimes I have actors who I coach and they ask me, what is personalization for? I'm here to play other people. I totally get it. Here's the thing. You carry your whole history with you when you use yourself. That doesn't mean that every character needs to sound like you, or look like you, or walk like you. Go do that character work. Get in there. Be juicy. But understand that when you're working with your emotional responses, if you can bring your own history, it's going to be more rich and more interesting because it's you bringing your life to that moment. Nobody will know that's what made that moment rich. Nobody has to be like in the know as to what you're using specifically. In fact, I'd recommend that you don't share personal substitutions as much as possible. That's just for you. It's private. But using a person or a situation or an event that you really know and understand because you lived it is going to bring that sense of lived itness to that moment as a character. So that's really helpful. And personalization is the fastest way out of a rut when you feel stuck during an audition. The third P is point of view. Now, point of view can be a lot of different things. Point of view is important because it's the part that you take a little bit of a risk on. When I'm watching auditions, everybody's good at that point, right? I'm watching the top 10% already. And what I can tell you is that the thing that's going to make you stand out is your point of view. Now, your point of view may not be right for our story. That happens. Your point of view may be different from the direction that we were planning to go on the casting and the producing side. That happens. However, your point of view is how we will remember you. The people that tend to not make it to that final round are the ones that have no point of view because they are people-pleasing during their audition. Listen to that again. They had no point of view because they were people-pleasing during their audition. They were so focused on what they think they want on the other side of whoever's watching their tape or whoever's on the other side of the table that they stop their own impulses as to how they want to do it. I would much rather have their point of view on the audition be wrong. And especially with a self-tape, we know that we weren't in the room with you to redirect you. But if you're right for the part and you have a killer audition with a great point of view, we might ask you to retape with the new notes to see if you'll be able to get it in the right direction. But most likely, all those stories where you hear, oh, an actor walked in and they changed our mind, it's because their point of view was so strong and they went, this is how it goes. It goes like this. And that phrase, it goes like this, is your best friend. I remember watching an interview with Bryan Cranston, and he explained that he loved to go first in auditions because he described it as peeing on the hydrant first. Everybody after him wouldn't have his take on it. They'd be compared to him. Now, that's only going to work if you walk in there with a great point of view that it's personal to you, that you are excited about. That's going to help with the nerves. It's going to help you with the preparation. It's going to help you with the tedium of, oh, here we go, another self-tape where I don't have all the information. Maybe it's a part where you don't get to read the whole script. That happens a lot. Most of that's just because they're still working on it or because it's totally under wraps and they just can't have it floating around on the internet. Whatever the reason, you might not get access to that information, which means that your point of view is more important than ever. I wrote down a little statistic here. Usually when I'm watching auditions, 10% of them are terrible. They're just too green. They don't really know what they're doing yet, and it shows. Then there's 10% of them that are great, and that's usually your short list or your callback list, all right? Then 80% of them are just blah. They're just mediocre. They're very forgettable. And there's a lot of ways to describe what's going on with that 80%. It could be that you're not taking enough risk, or you're trying to make us happy. Like I said, the people pleasing is a really big problem in auditioning. But I think that more than that, it's that they lack a point of view. So they take what's on the page and they fulfill it enough to justify saying that they've done the work. But at the end of the day, there's no stamp on it. There's no element of them infused in that character. It's just okay. And okay doesn't get the part. And I've been guilty of this. Sometimes, hey, that's good enough. And you just send it. And if that's you and that happens, don't beat yourself up about it. But understand if that's a habit that you have. And recognize that the fastest way to break that habit is to have a really strong point of view. How do you strengthen your point of view? This is something that people don't talk about very much. Strengthening your point of view requires you to say, I think it's this. I like this. It makes sense to me like this. For example, maybe you have an interrogation scene and you're playing the bad guy and you haven't confessed yet. Take a look at that moment of confession. What's the point of view to you of this character? Are they enjoying it? Watching how hard the cops are working? Do they think it's funny? Seeing people try so hard to catch them in a lie? Are they terrified of getting caught? Do they have a lot of guilt that they're trying to cover up with arrogance? What's going on there? It's your take on how you interpret the scene. How does that actor walk into the room? Sometimes it helps to visualize, what would my favorite actor do walking into the room? It's not because you're going to copy them. It's because you're going to take inspiration from that and say, that's my point of view. I think they walk into the room a little cocky and they think they're going to get away with it and they're excited to rub it in their face. Now, once you figure out this is my point of view, I see the scene going like this, then it's up to you to just fulfill that completely. What does that mean for every single moment of the scene? What was the moment before with that point of view? How does it change how they sit down? How does it change how they open their mouths for the first time? How does it change their attitude towards the cop interrogating them? How does it change their answer? Does it bring sarcasm? Does it bring power? Does it bring shame? What happens because your point of view of this is how the scene goes is going to inform a lot of that. Now, you don't want to take something that's completely out of character. If your character is described as being mousy, shy, ridden with guilt, and about to burst into tears the entire interrogation, and you make her arrogant, cocky, and super assured, that might not be what's right for the story, and you might get yourself out of that job. However, you could say that it's all those things, but there's this extra element, and that could be something informed by your point of view. If she's mousy, riddled with shame, totally shy, and about to burst into tears the entire time, is it real? Is it put on? Is it manipulative? Is it genuine? Is it heartbreaking? What kind of reaction are you hoping the audience is going to get from this scene? And you might say, you know what? I think it's written to be manipulative, but what if she's really those things? and you decide your point of view, you're going to play it for keeps, that this person feels horrible about what they've done, and you really lean into that, that is going to make your audition stand out. It might not always be right. Like I said, you will be remembered. And if the work is good and real and you bring a fullness to it, that casting director is going to bring you back. So don't be afraid to pee on the hydrant. Point of view can make or break your audition. I hope you learned a lot from this. Please watch some of our other videos to check out more tips about all the elements of working in entertainment.